Hi, and welcome to True Crime, a channel dedicated to the dark underworld of criminal activity carried out by gangsters, mobsters, cartel leaders, and others. Get ready to hear a story of betrayal, revenge, and a family torn apart. Join us as we explore the revelations made by Juan Pablo Escobar and uncover the shocking truth behind the downfall of one of the world's most notorious criminals. Let's get started. The official account. The tale of Pablo Escobar's demise has long been shrouded in mystery and controversy, with various parties claiming credit for his downfall. While the government's official account of his death may seem suspect, some undeniable truths emerge from the story. On that fateful day in December of 1993, the authorities finally caught up with the elusive drug lord in his hometown of Medellin. It was a triumphant moment for the government, marking the end of a 6-month search that had cost millions of dollars. But how did they manage to track down one of the world's most wanted criminals, a man who had evaded capture for years? The official account states that Pablo was caught thanks to a phone call he made to his son. It's a tantalizing detail that raises more questions than answers. Why would a man as notorious as Escobar make a call that could easily be traced? And how did he manage to evade detection in a city that was under constant surveillance? Despite the doubts that linger, there is evidence to suggest that this part of the story is true. Pablo did make that fateful call, one that would ultimately lead to his downfall. But what compelled him to do so, and how did he manage to slip through the net of law enforcement? These are questions that may never be fully answered. Juan Escobar. Pablo Escobar was a terrifying lord, a psychopathic killer, and a ruthless businessman, but not to his son. To Juan Pablo, Escobar was a loving father. It was I was willing to give my life for him. That's how deeply I loved him. Juan Pablo was born in 1977, right around the time Escobar became one of the richest men in the world. But believe it or not, Juan Pablo had no idea just how ruthless and violent his father was until very late in his teenage years, because Pablo worked very hard to shelter him and make him see his point of view. When you were enjoying the riches of your family, did that make you feel that your father's work, his criminal work, was okay? No, because I didn't know exactly what he does. As he grew up, Juan began to pick up ideas here and there. Sometimes this was unavoidable, and the whole family would have to pack up and leave the country after Pablo would murder a public figure. But even then, Pablo wrapped his dark affairs in gold leaf for his kids. He was telling me when I was 7 years old. He told me after he killed the minister, and when we went to Panama, he told me that he was abandoned. So a man who gives you love every day tells you he's abandoned the people to judge him. And what does bandit mean to a 7-year-old? It could be a petty thief or someone who jaywalks, for all the kid knows. Of course, Pablo wasn't going to tell his son that he would enter the wives and children of judges who threatened to arrest him. Interestingly enough, Juan Pablo didn't judge his father even after he grew up and found out the true reality of his crimes, not even after Pablo condemned him to a life on the run. Considering the life he gave you, the life on the run, the threats to your life, the poverty eventually, is there a part of you that also hates him? No, there's no chance I could hate my father. As a child, Juan's father was a beacon of love and affection, always present with his family and doting on his son. Before this, before you knew who his father was, he was a very good man to me. I received a lot of love from him. That's what I remember. However, the man's memories of his father are complicated by the fact that he was also Pablo Escobar, a notorious drug lord and criminal mastermind who terrorized Colombia for years. To some, he was a hero, a modern-day Robin Hood, who stole from the rich and gave to the poor. Pablo Escobar was also seen as a hero. He was seen as a Robin Hood figure, someone who steals from the rich and gives to the poor. Despite his father's notoriety, the man remembers a time when they visited poor villages in Colombia to provide aid and support to those in need. I also remember when we went to see the poor villages in Colombia to help them, and that's the father that I knew at the beginning. It's clear that in the early years of his life, the man's father was a compassionate and caring figure, eager to make a positive impact in the world. But as Juan grew older, he began to see the darker side of his father's life. Pablo Escobar was responsible for countless acts of violence and destruction, and even though he tried to shield his son from his criminal activities, he couldn't help but reveal his true nature. There was another problem. Pablo enjoyed violence and was proud of his life, so even though he tried to shelter his son from his criminal life, he couldn't help but reveal his actions. Despite the complex and often conflicting emotions he feels towards his father, the man can't deny that Pablo Escobar was a complex figure. He built football pitches, restaurants, hospitals, and even an entire neighborhood to house the homeless people in Medellin. Pablo Escobar was a bag of mixed messages for his son. For better or for worse, the man's father left an indelible mark on the world and his son's life, who was the real betrayer. In the heart of Medellin, the tension was palpable. The city was buzzing with the news of Pablo Escobar's whereabouts. Reporters jostled for position in the hotel lobby while police patrolled the streets below. And yet, amidst all this chaos, there was one person who remained surprisingly calm: Pablo Escobar himself. Even though his family had warned him against making any calls, Pablo couldn't resist. He called his son Juan, not once, not twice, but 6 times. It was a fatal mistake. His phones were tapped, and his location had been pinpointed. But instead of fleeing like a cornered animal, Pablo chose to face his fate head-on. As he stood at the open window of his aunt's house, the world outside seemed to fade away. All that mattered was the decision he had to make: betray his family and life, or betray himself and give them a chance at life. And at that moment, Pablo made the ultimate sacrifice. He ran up to the burial rooftops, knowing that his bodyguard El Limon would be by his side until the very end. The sound of gunfire echoed through the city, and when it was all over, only photographs and the locations of his gunshot wounds remained. But the true story of what happened that day is far more complex. Only Pablo Escobar could have killed Pablo Escobar, that much is certain. But it was his devoted family who helped him make that final decision. They had been through so much together, and now they were willing to do whatever it took to protect each other. So, as we reflect on the life and death of Pablo Escobar, let us remember that it was not just one man who brought about his downfall. It was a web of intricate relationships, loyalties, and sacrifices. And in the end, it was Pablo's devotion to his family that led to his ultimate betrayal. What Juan did do to his father's betrayer. As Sebastian rose to his feet, he knew that his life was about to change. He had become an accomplished architect and lecturer, and now he called Argentina his home. But he carried with him a heavy burden: the legacy of his father, the infamous Pablo Escobar. As he spoke about living in his father's shadow and the crimes he had committed, Sebastian urged people not to idolize him. Before he was a famous kingpin, he was a ruthless criminal, he warned. When asked about the number of murders that his father was responsible for, Sebastian could only estimate that it was around 3,000. But Sebastian was not like his father. He chose not to retaliate against those who betrayed him or his family. Instead, he sought forgiveness from the families of those who had been killed by his father. It took great strength to fight the urge for revenge with peace and love, especially for someone who had grown up under the same roof as Pablo Escobar. Today, Sebastian goes by the name Juan Pablo. He no longer seeks anonymity, for he has nothing to hide. He did not kill or harm anyone, and while he is not proud of his father's violence, he is proud of the love that his father had for him, his mother, and his sister. Juan Pablo understands that people have the right to love or hate his father for the things that he has done. Perhaps Juan Pablo's story offers a valuable lesson to all children of cartel members and records. You do not have to follow in your parents' footsteps. You can choose love over hate and forgiveness over revenge. It takes great courage to break the cycle of violence and choose a different path, but it is worth it in the end. And Juan Pablo is living proof of that. Thank you for watching another amazing video from our true crime team. Like, comment, and subscribe. And stay tuned to our next real-life true crime video.